G'day mates, it's Busta here, and before the episode begins, I would like to give Best Fiends a shout out for sponsoring this video. So, as you guys know, true crime and horror is my passion, but even I need the occasional change to keep myself sane. So, when I feel like I need a bit of a mental palate cleanser, my go-to refresher is Best Fiends. Best Fiends is a great little game that features an array of puzzles with an engaging story and is just a really fantastic piece of entertainment for casual gameplay. I've been playing it on my phone at night when I can't sleep, and I'm up to about level 100 now, and I've really enjoyed the fact that I don't have to invest huge amounts of time into the game to see progress and to have some fun. And I guess that's the really great thing about Best Fiends. It's just a great little casual game that you can pick up, play as much or as little as you like, put it down, and come back to it at your convenience. I also love the aesthetic of the game though, and that you can engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of characters too. It's a 5-star rated mobile puzzle game on the Apple App Store and Google Play as well. And you can download free on the Apple App Store or Google Play today. And remember, that's friends without the R. Best Fiends. So, it's been about a year since my last story, I suppose, and I visit this place every now and then to listen to other people's stories, but haven't had much interest in contributing any of my own. The stories that I have shared were mainly for entertainment. What I mean is that I could recount the events with ease because they virtually meant nothing to me. Just interesting stories to tell, you know. However, what I'm about to share is not something many of my closest friends or even family know about. The events that happened to me were, well, traumatic. The effects have cemented in the way that I think, view people, and my ability to trust, or lack thereof. I'm afraid to admit that this is not a story in which I showed immense courage or resilience or anything. Instead, I just kind of buried these memories deep until more recently. This is a pretty messed up encounter story that is about a truly sick man. The kind you hear about on TV or podcasts or something. The kind of evil man who managed to build something of himself, despite his unnatural desires, only to use his wealth and resources to further manipulate and take advantage of kids. So, a little bit of background. I grew up in a very poor part of New England, a Hispanic-dominated area. The city is pretty small and has always been a conundrum to me, really. The city is known for its drugs use and violence. It was once a prospering mill city, one where immigrants came to work and secure their own slice of the American dream. The city and much of its residents have since disintegrated like the stones that make up the massive factories that loom over the city. The conundrum I speak of is, while this city remains open to high criminal activity, the surrounding towns are just doing great. Less than 10 miles north, you enter New Hampshire, where things are generally quiet, and south you'll pass through multiple rich and thriving towns. And the man that I'll introduce later would come down from New Hampshire to prey on the poor kids from my community. So, I was maybe 13 years old, I think. It was definitely summertime because I remember the heat. It was a fun summer though. My friends and I were outside all the time, and while none of us had a car, we made the most of walking where we needed to go, and I was a bit younger than the guys that I was hanging out with at the time, so they were always able to kind of stay out later than me. It's funny how everything that happens while you're not there feels like you've missed out on the best stuff. Anyway, one day while we're all just kind of hanging around, a friend of mine mentions, "Hey, maybe we can get Ryan to come by and buy us some food." Always feeling left out, I acted as if I knew who Ryan was, the whole time thinking that he was a teenager, perhaps in his early 20s, I suppose. I let the conversation go on for a bit before I could not resist, and I asked, "Who's Ryan?" The response I got drove me crazy because it only furthered my frustration of not totally feeling like I was a part of the gang. "You don't know who Ryan is? We've been working for him for a few weeks now. He owns a junkyard, and we go and strip cars, log spare parts, and just mess around, really. We get him to buy us stuff, and he lets us drive his cars." I thought, how could this be? I felt so embarrassed and betrayed that all my friends, apparently, had a job. And we're going out to eat and drive cars, and I was just finding out about it. So, wanting to fit in, I urged them to get me a job too. My friend Eli, a leading figure in our group, pulls out his cell phone and gives this Ryan guy a call. The way Eli was talking to him made it seem like Eli was in control, like he was bullying Ryan or something. He spoke to him aggressively and told him that we were hungry and for him to come and pick us up and buy us some food. And Ryan agreed. Shortly after this, the man pulls up in his red pickup with a tow in the back and his company logo on the side of the truck. He was a white man, mid-40s, short and kind of chubby. He had a high-pitched voice that screeched out when he would laugh. And when he arrived, he immediately turned to Eli and started talking shit to him, making fun of him, letting out a bit of a laugh. It weirdly made me feel at ease too, because it just wasn't the way I expected an adult to act. It was kind of like he was one of us and you were in if you were cool with him. Eli introduced me to him and told him that I want to work. He examined me and asked if I knew anything about cars. I told him that I did, and he agreed that we'd talk about it over lunch. He told us all to jump into his truck and asked me to sit in the front seat so that we could talk. I remember that drive like it was yesterday. We were listening to the radio, and I could see that he was singing underneath his breath, so I purposely started singing the song out loud, acting as if I didn't know that he was also singing. He noticed and turned the music up, looked at me and started singing loudly. We did this the whole ride until arriving at an Italian place, and the food was amazing. I had only ever been out to eat a handful of times at this stage, and none of them were with friends, ordering whatever we wanted and goofing off the whole time. It was a real treat, and only really made me want to be in with Ryan even more. It was clear that he played favourites, and those who he liked received more gifts. And at the end of lunch, he agreed to give me a job and made Eli agree to let me know the next time that we had to work. The next month or so felt like I was having the best summer of my life. Ryan owned a junkyard in New Hampshire and also had a car rental service. He was expanding his business, so there was a ton of construction going on. His office was in a construction trailer outside the yard. This is where you would find him if you needed anything. He would pick us up in the morning and bring us to the yard, and for 8 hours we would honestly just kind of mess around. We'd walk to the very end of the yard and hide out in cars. We would take naps and scavenge through the hundreds of cars hoping to find valuables, and occasionally we would actually have to work, but even then we would mess around a lot. And all the while, we were getting paid. Not a ton in retrospect, but more than any of us had ever received. But more than the pay, what we really wanted was our own car. He easily had 30 of them, not including the cars that he rented. Each car was in fair shape, and each day he would throw Eli a different set of keys, and it really made the rest of us jealous. You see, Ryan didn't really care if you had a license or not, and Eli didn't, and he drove a different car pretty much every day. I personally had my eye on a Mazda sedan. I wanted the car so bad when I approached Ryan that I nearly begged him for it. He agreed that we would talk about it at the end of the day, and I spent the whole day just kind of imagining my life with that car, how cool I would look, pulling up to places, getting girls' attention, and a car at the time was like entering a new world, and I just might have one at the end of the day. The end of the day came, and he threw Eli some keys and told him to bring everyone home except for me. This wasn't alarming to anyone because all I could think about the whole day was how he was going to give me that car. After everyone left and the sun was setting, Ryan asked me to talk in his trailer. He started with how kids are always coming and going, trying to take advantage of him, stealing from him, and explaining how ungrateful people are to his generosity. And I strangely felt like he was speaking about me, but kind of indirectly. He asked me a lot of questions about drug use. Are you on drugs? Have you ever taken any? How do I know that I can trust you? How do I know if you'll pay me back and just not ruin my car and never give me a dime? My response to all of it was no, I would thoroughly work off what I owed for the car, and he then asked if I had anything in my pockets. I said no and willingly turned them out, and then he said, "Do you really think that I'm that stupid? Like you would hide stuff in your pockets? I know that you're hiding things in your clothes." I had no warning bells ringing because a lot of what he was saying was true. We all stole from him, whatever we could, whenever we could get away with it. We all thought that we were in control and kind of using it. It's an amazing thing how someone can get you to do something and to do it on your own accord. I feel like it was your idea. No matter what I said, though, he just kept repeating, "I know you have something, I know you do." Ensuring him that I don't, I would move my shirt around and pull on my waistband. It wasn't taking. He just kept repeating that he doesn't make deals with thieves. And then I got the idea, painfully in retrospect, that I'll just take my stuff off, show this guy that I don't have anything. So, standing there with most of my stuff off at this point, I took off my pants and I stood there in triumph thinking, you see, I don't have anything. With only my boxers on, I started to kind of jokingly dance because I thought that I had won. I don't have anything after all. But then Ryan said, "Take off your boxers." I was really confused by this, and I was like, "What? I don't have anything. Why does this guy not believe me?" Ryan just sat behind his desk and told me again to take my boxers off, and I was frozen. And even though I hadn't said the words, I knew that I was alone at this point, far away from home, and confusion just took over my mind. I didn't have any thoughts, really, just kind of frozen, and he leaned forward and said, "Are you going to make me go over there and take them off for you?" It's weird how I still did not think that I was being taken advantage of. Honestly, my brain still thought that this guy really thinks that I stole something. And I actually remember thinking to myself, what the fuck could I hide in my boxes? I said to him again that I don't have anything, and, well, he completely dropped the whole stealing bit. And then just said straight out, "I want to see your dick. Pull it out." At this point, I didn't know what to do. It really sucks that you don't have any options to freeze time, actually think about what's happening, and instead, you're forced to make a choice, as fast as you can choose the words while having a conversation. My brain went into survival mode, though, and that mode was to not look at the situation for what it actually was. I did what he asked, choosing to believe that it wasn't a big deal. He just sat there and looked at me, and honestly, thank God that that's all that he did. I began to shake, and I grabbed my clothes, and he snapped out of whatever world that he was in and started moving things around on his desk, looking in drawers, and I couldn't meet his eyes because I was ashamed and confused. He eventually spoke and said something like, "Don't crash it," as he threw the keys to the Mazda. I caught the keys and left, trying really hard not to think about what had just happened. I didn't want to face it, and that's why when I got home, I just chose not to say anything. My father, who I am sure would have killed him, I was embarrassed to tell him, knowing he would think, "Why would you do that? Why didn't you fight? I raised you to be tough. Why would you do that?" And so in the end, I just showed up like any other night, except this time, I had my own car. Now, I clearly did not think things through because I was like 14 and I just came home with a car. My parents were pissed, and they told me to call one of my friends and have them pick the car up, and they also said that I couldn't work there anymore. To be honest, though, I wasn't upset. The next day, I told Eli that I was quitting and asked if he could pick up my last pay. He tried to convince me not to quit, but I stuck to my parents being adamant on my quitting, and Eli would call me a few days later and tell me that Ryan wouldn't give me what he owed me. Instead, I had to get it myself. I never tried to get the money because I just couldn't face it. Fast forward a few months, though, and I was with some of those guys, and my friend Joe said something. "Hey, guys, did Ryan ever ask you to show him your dick?" And to my surprise, everyone said yes, but they all said that they didn't do it. I lied to them all and made up some story where I freaked out and threatened him. And over the years, I found out that all of the kids did it. There were 8 of us. One kid did it with his mum waiting outside in a car to pick him up, in fact. Not sure if Ryan knew that she was outside, but the kid just never said anything. We all just kind of buried it. We were tough guys, or wanted to be, and no one wanted to remember that. Fast forward again 7 or 8 years this time, and I was 22 or 23, and a newer friend who was struggling to get work tells me that he landed a job at a junkyard in New Hampshire, except the guy who owns it asked him to get naked and show him his dick. And my mind nearly blew up. By then, I had grappled a bit with it and developed anger, and I freaked out. Asked him to tell me everything, and he said that he's known to pick people up for work, and after a couple of days of working, he invited my friend Joe into his trailer, and basically did something that he did to me. What actually really disappointed me, though, was that my friend, who was in his 20s, actually did it. And even now, I understand the craziness of the request and how he's able to get you to do it, but I so badly wish that Joe acted the way that I wish I did, knocking this guy's teeth down his throat. What's even crazier, though, is that while he was telling me, this girlfriend that we both had overheard and says, "Are you guys talking about creepy Ryan?" And again, my mind just blows up. She tells us that he's apparently gotten multiple people over the years and he can't be touched, that people have tried, but he does tow work for the city and PD of that town and has since made connections. Now, I don't know the details of these reports, whether or not investigations were underway, but people told the truth and he was still out there doing what he wanted. And while hearing that he was still out there was truly shocking, my thoughts on him ended with that drunk conversation. Fast forward another 3 or 4 years, and I was 26 or so. I was out after a night of bar hopping, and a couple and I decided to get chicken at a late night spot everyone goes to after the bars close. And while I was there, I was approached by a guy who recognized me. I didn't recognize him at first, but then realized that it was an old friend, Brandon. We were friends at that time, and we both worked for him. Last I heard, he had a bad heroin addiction, and the rumors were certainly true because I could barely recognize him. He was happy to see me, though, and asked if I could spare a few bucks or a cigarette, then asked if I could give him a ride to where he was staying. Brandon said that he was abandoned and needed to get back up with his friend in NH, and I really didn't want to, but he was insistent and wouldn't stop asking despite my body language. And what I assume was a distasteful look on my face as well, but in the end I agreed. I needed to get my car, so I took his number down and told him that I would call him when I was outside. He didn't believe me and kept begging that I don't ditch him, and honestly, looking back, I kinda wish that I did. So while we were driving, I was contemplating how Brandon was going to kill me, trying to drive alert, just in case he tried anything crazy. I was aggravated because I didn't want to do this, and realizing more and more that we were never really friends, that I barely knew him years ago, that he was pretty much a stranger. I didn't like where this was going. But on the road, he tells me to take a left, and I get a really weird familiar sense of where we were, and I ask, "Hey, where is your friend's place?" Brandon replies, "Did you ever meet Ryan?" And honestly, every time I heard that guy's name, my mind just blew up. I literally shouted out, "Wait, what? You're staying with Ryan? That guy's a fucking piece of shit pedophile who takes advantage of kids. What the fuck are you doing there? I assumed that guy was in prison already." Brandon just laughed and said, "Yeah, I work with him. He's weird, but you just need to smack him up a bit and he doesn't try that weird shit on you." I was pissed and kept trying to explain to Brandon how severe this guy was and that it wasn't a small issue. But Brandon just kept shrugging it off and said many people have paid him visits and put him in hospital a few times even, and something about him being kidnapped at one stage and having to pay money to families threatening to kill him. He also said that the cops have paid him multiple visits and there was a charge against him at one stage, but he paid his fees and may be on some registry, but he still has everything that he had before. None of it was satisfying to hear, and I wanted to hear that he was rotting in prison, or even dead. After hearing this, though, I just refused to drive him all the way there, and I dropped him off at the top of the street. I said good luck, and I just sped off out of there. I was so angry driving home that he was still out there and even walking around. Eventually, though, I got home and I just kind of passed out and slept in late. When I woke up, though, I had a missed call and also a voicemail. I listened, and it was Ryan. I'm assuming that Brandon told him that I gave him a ride, and perhaps the things that I said. He said that I needed to call him back so that we could talk, that Brandon was in bad health and that he needed to talk to me. I was shocked and, honestly, a little bit scared. Hearing his voice seriously gave me chills, but I paced around my apartment and eventually decided to call him back. But when I called back, I just completely lost it. I screamed at him, called him a pedophile, and told him that I was actually going to kill him. I reminded him of what he did, all while swearing and describing how I wanted him dead. He eventually hung up on me, and I immediately blocked the number and started mentally preparing myself. I honestly thought that I had just started a war and told myself that I needed to get ready for him to come, that this guy would try to kill me because I wanted to expose him. Luckily, no one ever came, though, and my paranoia eventually drifted off. I would move a couple of years later and can say that I've not heard anything of that name again. I also pray that I never do. Please, though, people who listen to this, if you have kids, watch out for them, hey? There are real psychos out there, and even though you think that you're well put together, things can happen to you or the ones that you know real quickly. I was ashamed for a long time for not coming forward and doing all that I could to stop this prick. It was easiest to just kind of bury it deep and act as if it never happened. That, unfortunately, comes with consequences, and it does change you. These days, I really don't trust anyone, and I make up the worst intentions for people right from the get-go. I'll never forgive him, that's for sure, and could care less if he died a painful death. I'll admit that I've grown from it and have moved on, but it still does sting a little knowing that he never faced the punishment that he deserved.